talking. So first of all, my name is Kathy Verbeek. For any of you that may not know me, I know a lot of you. And I am one of the foundational coaches and work with all of the market centers within Bergen County Partners. I'm also a full-time production agent, and I'm actually out of the Tenafly office. And our topic this evening is going to really be talking about pricing strategies and also building a simple CMA. And some of what we'll talk about is kind of the thought process as we talk about building a CMA. So anything that anybody wants to share, anything good happened today that you'd like to share before we get started?
The Allen tool.
Me, Kathy, something bad happened.
Oh no, Max, what happened?
I just learned that my boss, my husband's boss, bought a house.
But not with you.
But not with me.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like a little bit disappointed. I was like, oh my God, I could have had a nice deal and they're so nice. But yeah. So they didn't know, and it's my fault because I didn't introduce me as a real estate agent. I told my husband, but I didn't send them a text. So it's my fault. But yeah.
Well, you know what? It's those are those lessons that we have that, right. You know, we live through. And you're gonna, it sounds like you're gonna put a few other things in place, Max, for going forward, so that doesn't happen again.
Definitely. And even though you have people around you that have like houses and they're settled, you never know, because they are settled and they literally found a house in like 4 days. Like they didn't even tell us, and they were like, we are moving out. And I was like, okay. So, you know, but that's gonna happen. That's gonna happen. You know, all of you have to remember, first of all, this is a numbers game. It is competitive. There are a lot of realtors out there. What you always want to think about, have you put your best foot forward? Ultimately, that buyer or seller is going to make a decision. And there's kind of a bold saying, some will, some won't. So what? Next. Exactly.
And what happens is, in the beginning, that kind of stings a little bit more when, you know, but it means there's something coming around the corner.
Right.
So, you know, Max, that happened today, but you're here present and you're ready to move forward. And, you know, that's a growing moment, right?
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah.
I'm just joking around, just joking about it, because you never know. You really never know. I was not sure they were planning to move, but they were not sure. And literally today, my husband texted me, they're moving. And I was like, oh, okay. I said, without me, they didn't even call me. And, you know, but I'm just joking around. Yeah.
What else am I doing? I'm not sleeping. How are you still functioning? I don't know.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Anybody else before we start talking about pricing and CMAs?
All right. Thanks, Marissa. Thank you.
All right. Okay. We're going to then move forward, and I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to just put everyone on mute for now. And but certainly if you have a question, you know, want to comment, I'm going to be sharing the screen, so I don't always see. So just please speak up because I'm going to have a PowerPoint on the screen. So let me go there. All right. Is everybody seeing my screen? Just give me a shout out.
Yeah, we do.
Thank you so much. Okay, so you're in the right place. It's Tuesday evening, I believe January 25th. We're doing career builders, and today is pricing strategy and building a CMA. So I want to talk a little bit about pricing your home and pricing a home. So obviously when we're doing pricing, we can do pricing for our sellers or potential sellers. We can also do pricing when we're putting an offer in for our buyers and giving them some information, right? Any other times that you might be giving? So you're making an offer, you're going on a listing appointment. Any other times where understanding the pricing might be something that could be helpful to a buyer or a seller. Or a friend.
Home equity analysis.
Or home equity, if they're planning to maybe get a home equity loan, or maybe they want to refinance. I'm actually doing something right now with my daughter. She bought 2 years. Thankfully, she did buy from me. And right now, and she's got some, listen, it happens. So they have PMI. And right now we're looking at what equity they have in their home, because the lender may be able to remove the PMI. So they're not going to refinance because they had a great rate, but there's still an opportunity. So there's always different ways that you can be helpful and come from contribution. And this is a little cartoon that I actually use in my when I do webinars and seminars, but I also use with my sellers. So Max, you want to just read what it says at the bottom of the cartoon if you're there?
Yes, sure. It says, let me move my,
No
so it
problem.
says, yes, I know what all the comps says, but my house is special.
Right. So how often have we heard that, right?
Yeah.
And that could be also, you know, so that's if you're talking to a seller. What about the buyer, you know, especially in this type of market? And they're saying, but that house isn't worth it, right? So they're saying the other opposite. Here, they think their house is worth, as you know, tons of money. If you're a seller, if you're a buyer, you're typically saying, hey, what's the cheapest amount that I can get that home for, right? And it's part of our jobs to help them. So, oops, sorry. And so what have we learned? The market determines value. So let's talk about that for a few minutes. What type of market are we in right now? Are we in a seller's market or a buyer's market?
Sellers.
Sellers.
Okay, so I heard sellers. I did also heard the word both. Did I hear that correctly?
I think it's turning. I think it's turning to a buyer's market at the moment.
So I think, who said both? I'm curious to, who said both? Who wants to admit? Okay.
I didn't say both,
Be
but
shy.
they got some kind of, makes some sense saying that, because buyers are getting the opportunity to buy now because of the interest rate. So it's, you know, if you look at it from that point of view, it's also a buyer's market in that sense. But, you know, it's definitely a seller's market.
Well, and tell us, so let's talk about that for a minute. Like, why are we saying, why has it been a seller's market? What are the things that make it a seller's market?
The lack of inventory.
The lack of inventory, okay. Anything else?
Houses are going for over asking price.
Houses are going for over asking price, right? Right. And what do you think has driven up the prices of homes? You guys just said kind of couple of pieces of that recipe. What's been happening?
The inventory is moving too fast.
So we have fast inventory. You know, this is all about supply and demand, right? And if we step back and we think about what's happening right now in the world in terms of the supply chain, right? And you think about what's happened with the home industry, and think about the price of lumber and the price of steel and all those things that have risen. And there's been such demand because they keep on building, and also because people have wanted to renovate. We've been home, so everybody's looking around their houses and they're like, oh my God, I need to do this or I need to do that. And so what's happening is the demand is going so fast, and some of it has to do with the pandemic, where they've not been able to keep the supply going because, let's say, they don't have a full staff to do all the work. And so now there's a domino effect. And that's the same thing with houses. With when you have a little bit of inventory and you've got all this demand, and someone said it earlier, we've got buyers because of the interest rate. It's been, the last couple of years have been historically low, you know, even going below 3%. And now, even at, I think it's, last I saw was about 3.5% this week, 3.4%, something like that. Even at that point, those are still historic lows. And what that means is that buyers are still, when you think about it, there's two parts of the equation. When a buyer's getting a mortgage, it's the how much are they paying on principal, right? Which is building equity in their home. How much is going to interest, right? So what's happening is even at 3.4%, a buyer's still getting a lot for their home. So they're building equity faster, than when I was young. Interest rates were in the double digits. It was crazy. People paying 12, 14, 16% because they still wanted a house. So a lot of money was going into interest versus on the principal. And I remember a point in time when my husband and I were very happy that we were at a 6% interest rate. And now that seems crazy, right? Because we've been down to the 2 and the 3%. And so it's created this situation. Now, someone said about it being both or a buyer's market, and I think there is truth to that. And I think that we have, and I know Alex said that he's seeing some changes, and I think that's true too. We're seeing some shifts. And I also think that, this is one of those things that what you want to think about is it really will come down to perhaps the town and what's the inventory that's there. Some of the things that we've seen is what are the towns that are more desirable? So as people moved out of the city, then it could be that the prices have risen because they're moving out of the city, but they're looking for towns that have downtowns, walkability, that ability of access. So, and then towns that were closer to urban, to the city, maybe had at one point a downtrend. So it's something to watch very carefully. And I bring this up because every situation is going to be different. So as you think about building your pricing strategy, whether you're working with a seller or a buyer, you have to keep those things in mind, and you have to have your pulse on what's happening in the market in that particular neighborhood and area, because in some cases, not everything is going over asking. In some cases, things are coming in at ask, or you have the opportunity to go below ask. And you have to think about, are they buying a single family home? Are they looking to buy a condo or a townhome? And each of those are going to be different. So understanding those statistics as we think about. Any questions or comments about that before we move forward? All right. So,
Question.
go ahead, Gopi.
Is there any place or some kind of information where we can get the statistics, or it's just like try like your own, you have to create your own statistics on this?
I can show you. We're gonna, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go through a few slides. We can come back to that because I'm gonna go on to NJMLS to show you how to build a CMA, and I'm gonna show you where the statistics live, Gopi.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. All right, whoops. Hold on one second. Okay, so I wanted to just take a moment to remind everyone the value of the property is determined by what a buyer is willing to pay, what a seller is willing to accept in today's market, and also the appraisal. Buyers are making their pricing decisions based on comparing your property to other properties sold in your area and the days on market. And that's where we are. Obviously, there's always a conversation and always a negotiation. And sometimes we have to consult and guide our buyers because either they want to pay. I had one buyer who actually wanted to pay too much for a house. And I had to counsel them in terms of it really wasn't necessary. The comps, the competitive market analysis that I didn't really warrant them spending an extra $10,000, and that I felt that they actually could get the offer within a price range that I recommended. And thank goodness it worked. But that's where our expertise, our understanding things are really important. So has anybody seen this pyramid before that's up on the screen?
Yep.
On the right-hand side. Okay, good. And I find this to be, this is actually it's one of the slides that's actually in one of the templates, or at least an older template for a listing packet. And I find this to be an extremely helpful illustration as I'm talking to sellers and even talking to buyers about how to either price their home or to put an offer in. So if we look at here, we need to be competitive, right? If we want to, as a seller, we want to get our home sold, and also as a buyer, if we want to win the bid, right? So let's just talk about sellers for a moment. So when we think about the pyramid, what are we seeing here? What happens if your asking price is above market value? Then what type of buyers, how many buyers do you think are going to come in? If your house is overpriced, if the seller wants to list high, what do you think happens?
You're not gonna have
Less people looking.
Less people looking, right? And what about if they have and so, less people looking, and is that going to really help them get to where they want to be, right? When they go too high up, right? So you can see it on the screen here, fewer showings, maybe no offers or lowball offers, and you probably are going to have to take a price improvement, right? Meaning that you're going to have to take a price reduction. What about if you're in the middle in the market value? So what does that do to you as far as getting more buyers through the door? What do you think happens there?
You're at market value, right?
Market value. So what do you think happens? Now you're in the competition. So there's other houses in the town that are at the same price. So what does that do for you? What do you think in terms of if your town has an average price of 500,000 and the house that you're listing is around 500,000, what happens?
Doesn't it then just come down to the house features, and the people will you'll get the offers from the other house, whatever doesn't get accepted?
Well, and I think that's one of the things to think about is features and benefits, right?
Yeah, and you get more foot traffic too. You get more people wanting to see it.
Right. So if that's the average price in town, you have the potential to get more people through the door because now you're part of the competition. And I'm not sure who made the comment, but the features and benefits for 500,000, am I getting this amazing house that's been newly renovated? Or for 500,000, do I need a lot of updates? And down the street at 498, they can get a similar house, but it's totally been renovated. So sometimes, depending upon how we price it, did you ever hear how sometimes other realtors, what's that? Oh, please, we need to have you on mute, please.
Somebody needs to unmute, yeah.
Let me see if I can. Are we all muted? Okay. All right, so have you ever heard of that before? Where an agent may come in and show your property, you're the listing agent, but then they actually end up putting an offer down the street because that other house has perhaps similar to the house that you're listing, but has more features and benefits for the price. So understanding the inventory in town, understanding your competition, and as you're talking to your sellers and you're talking about how to price it, talking about when they think about being in the competition, do you want to be at the head of the line, ahead of the competition, so that you have the most features and benefits for your price? Or do you want to be in the middle where you potentially might get lost because maybe people will come and see, but maybe they won't if they don't have the time? Or do you want to be, closer to being priced too high so that there's less chance of their coming in? Now, so what happens if I price slightly below market? And think about that in terms of the base of the pyramid. So now what happens is I start going slightly below market value. In our example, market value is 500,000. What if I price it at 485 or 490? What do you think happens?
That's where the bidding word comes in.
That has the potential, right, to create that bidding war, because as you see on the right-hand side here, based on your pricing, see what happens when you are pricing well. All of a sudden you are opening up the universe of buyers who are going to want to come and see that home, and it's going to generate the most activity. Does that make sense? And
Yep.
these are some of the conversations that you're going to have with your seller if you're listing a property. Now, if you're talking to a buyer, you also want to talk to them about where they want to put their offer in at and what they can afford and where they would sit in competition compared to the competition of the other offers that may be in there, so that they end up with ideally putting their best offer in if they really want that home. Does that make sense?
Definitely. And possibly also cautioning them not to get, like you said, like your client wanting to offer too much money for a property. At what point do you decide to let's pull away from this property because there's another one that we said no to because it was at a higher price? So now you just go back to those comparables.
Right, right. And that absolutely, that as a consultant, our jobs are to, ask questions and have our clients think so that they're making educated decisions.
I mean, there's a realtor by me. Her whole strategy is to price low.
Mhm.
And I mean, she just sells houses all day, all night
Yeah.
because of it. And I was
Yeah.
like, wow. That might be her slogan also, but.
Hi, Kim. Welcome. Well, and one of the things you have to be careful with, it's interesting because it's, I think that it's situational. My personal opinion is that it's situational about how you price, and it's going to work with each client. And I will tell you, sometimes it backfires. I know that we had a property that we priced, and we priced it on the lower end because the seller was very motivated to be able to get an offer and move on with their life. But I did definitely had agents come in and say, oh, you guys priced it really low. And sometimes you're creating an artificial price war versus pricing it fairly, right? So there's a fine line, and you learn over time how to do that on it. So it's it's one of those things that you have to be cognizant of, because if the market shifts also, let's say you use that strategy, always pricing low, but if the market is shifting, then all of a sudden, supply and demand, as there become more houses on the market, some buyers are having fatigue right now. They're tired. Interest rates are going up. You may end up with less buyers, more inventory. All of a sudden, that always pricing low may backfire, right? And actually what you may get is what you've created, like your own destiny, because now they're going to offer you what you listed it at versus generating more offers, right? So it's a little bit of a dance, and I'm not saying that to be negative about any agent. It's just for you to think about what makes sense. And as you learn the market, you'll have a better sense of the right way to recommend pricing to your clients. Does that make sense?
Yes. Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome. Thank you for the conversation. I love it when we get to all talk together. So, as realtors, I just want to remind everyone, our job is to really provide the information to our clients so that they can make the right decision. When I price with a seller, I never tell them what price to sell it at. I give them a range, and we talk about it. And we talk about it so that they are meeting their real estate goals. This is another chart that you may have seen in some of the listing packets. And so this is really about pricing it right. And what this chart on the right-hand side illustrates is what happens is if you're pricing it right. So this area here, I don't know if you can see me kind of circling, but right below the line that says market value and kind of to the left of the red dot, in this area, this is where you've got your sweet spot, because you want to generate offers within the first 30 days. And in fact, with this crazy market, we're generating things within days of one another. of going on market. And so this is called being in the market. When somebody prices too high, when a seller really wants to price above market value, what typically will happen is that the house stays on the market longer. So if it stays, so that's called you're on the market, but you're not in the market. So yeah, you're on the MLS, but again, think about that top of the pyramid. You're not going to get the activity that you'd like to generate. So what do you think happens? Like, so what if you do end up with a seller that insists on a higher price? What conversations are you having with them to talk to them about? What counsel would you give them as far as so that the house doesn't stay on the market that long?
So I did this when selling my house. They did tell me to list that one price, but we really wanted another price. And I literally just did this. And we sat, we had people come through. And then the agent came back and said, these are the reasons, the feedback that they got, and really this is the price point that would bring people in. So then we had to lower the price. And since we lowered the price and we were sitting, then we got people coming in that wanted to negotiate even lower because they were like, oh, look at your house, it's waiting.
Yes, right. And so that is absolutely one of the things that happens. And so as realtors, when should we be having, if the seller really wants to list a little bit higher, what type of conversation are you having with them if you agree to go with that list price? What should come up during those conversations?
I think that we should caution them on the market, again, bringing them back to the stats and bringing them to the inventory and the possibility of some of the buyers settling for second best instead of going with their house. The longer the property sits on the market, the less of a possibility that it has of selling at a high price, because people start thinking, well, it's a seller's market, how come that house is not selling, you know? Then they'll start cautioning and probably even offering at asking or below asking.
So Elizabeth, let's say we have that conversation. And I think that, you know, here's the thing I'm going to just counsel on. It's all a matter of how that conversation plays out. We have to be careful because, you know, the old saying, the customer is always right. So we have to be careful how we would deliver that message, right? So that, but let's say we have that conversation and they really want to stay with that price. What options do we have at that point in our conversation with them?
So I was given a time frame, like we listed for X amount of time at that price, and then we agreed to then come back to the table to discuss it.
Right. So what Kim is talking about is having that conversation that say, listen, if we go in here, and typically what we know is within the market, after the first couple of weeks, if you're not seeing showings and you're not getting any offers, especially in this market, then we know there's a price thing. And at least, and so there's two ways to handle that. You can, you know, what's recommended would be that you actually are having them signing pricing paperwork at that point, so that when it comes time, you're going to bring it to that price, and almost like automatically within 2 weeks. The other option, and I will tell you, when I've had this experience, I've told them up front, let's do it, but we're going to watch in 2 weeks. And then I literally came back in 2 weeks. So they knew ahead of time I was going to come back to them. I went back to them in 2 weeks. What I thought was going to happen happened. And we then had a conversation and they said to me, well, we're not ready. And so we talked about kind of what Elizabeth was talking about. I brought out the market snapshot. I shared the comparables. I shared what was happening in the market. And I said, this is really where I think we should be, and I want you to be. And I gave them some options. And I said, I really would like you to be bold in your price change, because when you're going to take a price reduction, the first price reduction is the most profitable. If you nickel and dime those prices, it's just going to continue to stay on the market. And so what happened is that they said, oh, we're not ready. That I said, all right, just sleep on it. Next day I get a text, we're ready. Because I put enough information in front of them and they realized that for where they wanted to go, they needed to take that price reduction, and we took it. And then we, like you, Kim, we did have people that wanted to negotiate. It was a different market. This was in 2019. It was not in these last couple of years, but it is important to have. And honestly, sometimes we know when we learn that sometimes if we have a seller that's not coachable, we may actually say, you know what, maybe we're not the right real estate agent for you, right? And we have to be prepared for that.
So how serious are they, to sell the house if they're gonna really overprice it?
Well, and I think, Alex, that is something that you would always go back to motivation, because, these are those conversations where it's like, this price at 600,000 is not going to get you to Florida in 2 months, right? 550 is going to get you to Florida in 2 months, whatever that scenario is. And you have to be prepared to be able to have those conversations and to do in a way that you are not offending, but helping them. And sometimes having to say, listen, I know you're not going to like what I have to say,
That's saying it, yeah.
but I'm saying it out of care and helping you to achieve your goal.
I was looking at 2 homes that were for sale. One was on the market for 130 days. It was originally priced at 800. Another house that was very comparable was priced 6 days at 699. And that house that was originally 800 is down to 699.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's $100,000. That's
Yeah,
a big difference.
That is a big difference, but sometimes you have to be that bold.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to be that bold. This is a few years ago, and unfortunately, the people bought the house in 2006 at the high. And at one point, the agent that was representing them was actually taking $100,000 price cuts every 2 weeks.
Wow. That's a lot.
So that house originally was sold at $1.6 million. They put it on the market at tax level, which I think was $1.4 million. It eventually sold for under $1 million.
I have a question. What was the market value on it? On the house?
Market value on it was, at the time, originally it had been assessed at about $1.4 million, but what had happened was, it was a time when, what happened in 2006, people were building and buying very big homes. And then prior to the pandemic, people started kind of wanting smaller homes. And that's where all of a sudden 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes became fashionable again. Because the reality is, when you have a big house, it costs a lot to heat, costs a lot to clean, and taxes are extremely high. And a lot of times you don't really use the space. So eventually, I think at one point, Alex, maybe the worth was $1.1 million or something, but ultimately it sold for a little under $1 million. So, those are the things where sometimes, fortunately, those sellers were coachable. Fortunately, those sellers also were financially in a place where, while it hurt emotionally, it wasn't going to hurt their lifestyle. So.
Do you do the same approach with a for sale by owner? So like, I have a house near me that just went on as for sale by owner, and while we have $1 million homes, 1.2 is not what that house is worth. When you send like a CMA and try to present yourself, do you do the same tactic of like, really, this is where, and we can help you?
So I think there's a couple of things. I'm going to say overall, yes, you're going to have a similar conversation. Part of it is when you're working with, so when you're working with a regular seller, not for sale by owner, you always are asking them in the pre-qualification, well, what price are you thinking about that you want to get for this house? You want to get their opinion. You want to hear what they have to say, and you want to say to them, well, how did you come up with that price? So you're asking those questions. Go over to a FSBO, and yet you are doing something very similar. Oh, we got to mute everybody. You're doing something very similar. You're asking them because they're inviting you in, but you have to be very, obviously egos are fragile. People have prices that I mean, I wish I could get $1 million for my house. I know I'm not going to get $1 million, but that's how you emotionally feel about your house, right? So with a for sale by owner, again, you're asking questions about, so tell me how you came up with that price. Oh, okay, very good. Let's, and, how's that going? You've been on the market now for 6 weeks. Tell me what's happening. What type of activity are you getting? And then what you're doing is, depending upon where they are with the for sale by owner, you're going to share some comp information. What you have to be careful with the for sale by owner is that if they're just using you to get pricing information, and then they're going to continue to be a for sale by owner.
Right, that's what I was afraid of.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where in life, even though we should believe that all people are good, I think that we always have to say that we're not allowed to give the keys to the car over to somebody, right? So we're not going to give our important, valuable information in extreme detail without understanding that they actually want to go steady, right? So that's learning. And listen, we've all had those moments, but like if I go with somebody that's not ready to list, I'll share comp information. I'm not leaving any comp information with them. So it's again, when you list with me, I'm happy to, give you this information. So there's ways to, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so I think this is my last slide, and then we're going to go to NJMLS because I know you all want to learn about how to put together a simple CMA. And again, we've talked about this already. This is just to illustrate all the different things that get factored in when you're thinking about pricing and understanding your client if you're representing a seller and their motivation, but also the features and benefits of the house, where their house is located. If their house is located on a busy street or next to a railroad track, that may command less money versus being, on a quiet cul-de-sac, right? Is the house in move-in condition or is it a fixer-upper? All those things come into play. And again, I have price in here because from a buyer standpoint, what is their budget? Because ultimately, a buyer can, a lender will say to a buyer, well, it's only, $50 more for every $10,000 that you spend. But the reality is if you don't have cash, if that house doesn't appraise and you don't have cash, now you've put yourself in a situation where you have to walk away from a house and you're almost to the closing table and you've lost valuable time. So as agents, we really have to make sure that we are educating our buyers to understand that just throwing money at a house doesn't mean that that's the right financial decision to make. The way that I look at it is there's a saying that Arlene Bianca and I both have, and that is, we want you to enjoy living in your home, not living for your home. You shouldn't have to feel like you need to get 2 jobs to be able to. So that becomes part of our consultation. All right. Does everything we've talked about so far make sense? You guys ready to look at NJMLS? Did I give you some ideas and thoughts about how you're going to talk to your people? Right?
Yes.
About pricing?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, let's go out to NJMLS, and I just have to get to the right screen. So bear with me a second. Let's see whether, NJMLS, sometimes it bottoms out. And Gopi, I know you wanted to know also about where to get statistics, so I promise I'll show you. So what's that?
No, I'm saying.
Oh, okay, all right. So, so first of all, when I start a CMA, and I'm looking to meet with a buyer or a seller, what I always like to do is, first of all, get a feel for what's happening in the market. And you can do that by actually creating a property search. So I went under search and I went under property search. And for efficiency time, I have a save search here. This is one for TNEC. This is actually what I was using for my daughter with the comp analysis to determine what type of equity she now has in her home. So, and everybody can see my screen?
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Thank you, Alex. So I bring in, so it always defaults with the county. What I've done is I have put in active because I want to know what's out there. I want to know what's under contract and I want to know what's sold. And I want to know when I look at the market, I like to look at the most current information. So 3 months gives me a good idea of what's happening currently. If you're in the luxury market, so higher priced homes, sometimes you have to go further out. And right now I'm looking at the most current 3 months. A lot of times with the CMA, I'll even do 6 months because that kind of gives you kind of some stable information. And again, it'll depend upon your price point. And if you're doing luxury, you may even have to do it for a year because things don't sell typically as fast, okay? And that'll depend upon the time and it'll depend upon the price point. I always show, I will be honest with you, I look at things as I want everything to be comps. The house that they live in is in the non-flood area. So I'm looking at within Teaneck, all the towns, all the houses that are in non-flood, if there was anything in a flood zone there. They have a 3-bedroom, but I wanted to look at any 3 to 4 bedrooms and I put in my number of baths. They actually have a house that has 2.5 baths, but I wanted to see, because there's a lot of homes in Teaneck where they live, where they're traditional capes that originally only had 1 bathroom and they've been modified
Kathy.
over time. So yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Question.
Where did you get the floodplain from? Where is that?
Oh, floodplain is under additional criteria. That's a
Oh,
good
okay.
question. Was that Elizabeth?
Yes, that's it. Yes.
So
thank you.
under additional criteria, floodplain,
Okay.
every time I do a search for my buyers, that's part of the consultation. I say to them, I'm planning to run in non-flood, right? And they'll tell me yes, or they'll say, no, I'm okay. If they want to pay flood insurance, everybody's different, but I like to say that out loud because, they're actually, you do know that if you have to pay flood insurance, that's going to be more money. And
Thank you.
also what might be emotional stress, right?
Yep.
Okay, and so it's good for you to kind of go through and look at NJMLS and explore, and you can see all the different, I'm not going to do that because that's not the purpose tonight, but there's a lot of additional things that you can bring up in your criteria based on what your needs are. Okay. I do 1 to 2.5 baths, like I said before, because I know in this area, the types of homes there are, the town I'm looking in, and this actually is a map search. And I'm going to remove this and I'm going to show you how I did this because the reason why I do a map search is that I want to be able to search in the area of the home that I'm running the comp for. So what this does is by clicking on that map search, now I can recenter this map based on the address. Everybody seeing that?
Yeah, that's awesome. I never knew that.
yeah, no,
This is a very cool thing to do, and I first can recenter. So now it's going to show me this is the area that their house is in. And what I'm going to do, I'm using radius today. You can either draw a rectangle or you can do a radius. And I'm going to do 0.5, so you can decide how wide you want your circle to be. I'm doing a very small subset because, again, most towns have, I'm going to say, different personalities, right? And I know, like in my town, one side of the street gets more money than the other side of the main street. So I have to factor that in. When I know my town and I know my inventory, I understand that. And now I'm just click on draw a circle.
Yeah. Kathy, when I do the map search, I run into that problem because I live in Jersey City. The majority of the properties that I search for are here. So
Yeah.
it picks up from New York and it picks up from Staten Island. So how do I narrow that search, that circle, so that's only on one side and not the other?
Well, you can, so first of all, you can move it. Okay, so that's number one. The other thing is you might be having too broad of an area to search. So, you might want to say it's only going to be 1/4 of a mile. And now that's a smaller circle. And then I moved it over because I knew that there were certain areas that I wanted to be in. That would be, or you might, sometimes drawing a rectangle make more sense
Yeah.
versus a circle. So you have to decide that. Now, what I will tell you is right now, and this might also help you. So now that I have this, and I'm going to just do this, and I'm going to submit my map criteria. And that's where it comes up with this stuff that I don't really understand, but this is telling me the geocode. And it's saying that within that area, there are 22 homes to consider, okay?
Can you
Now,
show us where you got the map again one more time?
yes, yeah, let me go back. I find it to be a very good feature when I'm looking to really pinpoint. Let it just load up and then I'll go back there, okay? Sorry, it's a little slow. There we go. All right. So, and I'll go back to the map in a second, but here is what it's showing me right now in this price point in this neighborhood. If I looked at total activity in Teaneck, I would see that there are more things that are active and there's actually properties under contract. Oh, now there are showing under contract. The other day when I did this, I had none under contract and it's showing me sold. So now I kind of have a whole universe of houses for me to look at to consider what I'd want to include in my CMA. And you do go through and you cherry pick who those are going to be. I'm going to go back a second to just show the map again. So it's right here. This is the choice on the top of the page, map search. I click on map search and that brings me into the map. At that point, you type in the address that you're looking for to center around. And once you do that, you recenter, so it goes into this area, and then you put your radius in. And I'm drawing my circle, and I don't want to be on the other side of Route 4. I want to be more in this section, so I'm moving my circle, and then I'm submitting my map criteria. Okay?
Thank you.
You guys like that feature?
Yes, I usually get a lot of buyers saying,
Go ahead. We're just waiting to come up again.
yeah, I've gotten a few buyers that live in New York, and they usually say, "Oh, I want to live 25 minutes from New York or in Brooklyn." So I've had to, be strategic about it, look myself in the map, and then go back and plug in those towns, so that way, and go to another calculator and calculate for, okay, how many miles, which towns. If I would have known this, it's so much easier.
Well, I think the other thing, Elizabeth, so you certainly can do that, but the other thing is too, is I always give my buyers assignments. And so certainly for your own education, you understanding kind of what that 25 minutes is, but you also are allowed to go back to them and say, okay, you got Google Maps, go ahead and go check it out yourself. Go take some drives, because the other thing is it's just miles, but I always encourage my buyers, hey, take a ride this weekend. I want you to see what it really is like to drive there. And do you like the area or not? Do you like where you can go buy milk and where the gas station is or the public transportation? So it's okay to also give your buyers assignments so that you can educate, but it's like I've also done where in KW search, you can say, tell me what towns are near train stations, and it'll actually come out with homes sold that are for train stations. So that's for another night. But there's a lot at our fingertips. So I want to keep going because I know we're running short on time. Okay, so now I have my list of homes that have come up, all the possible homes. Now, one of the things that I do is now I have that. And for a comp, from comparative market analysis, I really don't need anything in active. because it's not going to help me with pricing. And quite frankly, so unless the house is right by in the neighborhood where I'm comping, under contract is less helpful because I don't know what the price is. So it's a personal choice. Right now, I'm going to take this out. I'm only going to bring in solds. And what I do is I go in and I go under map listing. So now I go back and I look at a map. And I do that because now what I want to do is further narrow down. So that circle gave me so many houses. The house that I'm running the comp for is right in this area. So what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to make a conscious decision to really narrow my comparative houses to right in this neighborhood. I don't want the house on the other side of Route 4. That's a very different feeling. I don't want to be too far away from it. I want to be, and there's enough houses in the area for me to factor those houses in. Okay, so I'm making some conscious decisions. And I can also use this map when I'm sitting with my seller or my buyer so they can actually visually see where I've chosen homes to show them that I'm looking at their neighborhood, not on the other side of town or closer to Hackensack or whatever, which they can't relate to. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Thank you. I know you guys are tired. It's a long day. But again, I like this and I always use a map as part of what I do.
So, do you just do a screenshot of that map or do you remove the ones that you don't want to show?
So what I do is I actually go, you know, when you're doing a comparative analysis, you have to block out some time to do it. What I do is I actually go through here and I uncheck the ones that I don't want.
Okay.
Okay.
And then you go back to the map and then it's only going to have those that you, okay.
Exactly. And at that point, and now I'm going to show you, I actually have a saved CMA. So I'm going to kind of fast forward. And what I did was once I identified those houses, and actually, let me just do one thing. I want you guys to see one thing. I don't know if it's gonna let me go back. Well, I'll do it through here. So what I did was, once I went through there, there's actually one of the drop-down reports is called a comp report, a CMA report. And so I pulled up the CMA report. And when I create a CMA report, it's actually creating it to where it looks like a prospect. So this is the cover page that's coming in. So you can see here, I had put in, because they bought their house a couple of years ago. So I put in the MLS number when you originally set this up, and I put in the information. This pulls from MLS, and I put some additional information in here just for me. And now what I can do, hold on one second, I just have to move my bar, is I have the ability to, so I'm going to show you add or remove. So this is where, and I'll show you, I narrowed this down to a certain amount. I narrowed it down actually to these, what are they, 6 houses is what I used for their comparative. Okay, so that I really narrowed. I went from a larger vision to a smaller vision so that I could really fine tune. And what I also did was I started looking at, remember those features and benefits and the 3-bedroom and 2-bedroom that I had in my criteria? Well, now you can see how now what I pulled in are 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 1 bath. They all have 3-bedroom. This one has 4 bedrooms. And so then I'm able to be able to look at it. This one has 3-bedroom, 1 bath. What's interesting is this house sold for $491, and it's across the street from my daughter's house. They had bought their house 2 years before for $480,000. When I comped this house to actually be the same as my daughter's house, the new price of this house came out to $532,000. So that is actually showing the increased equity of what's happened with the market.
I think when you choose your
Yeah.
comps, don't you look at the square footage as well? Like, you want it to be as close as
I
possible.
do look at, I do look at the square footage. So, and I'll show you kind of the page that I use. When I do it, I look at the square footage of every house, and because the house is what you have is, so their house is 1,646 square feet. And what I did was, and the house I was just sharing with you had less square footage. So you have to factor that in. And there are actually, and this is really for another day, but I took a class with Jeffrey Otto, and what they does is there's a chart that gives you pluses and minuses. How much, so for example, this is showing in this house, there's a value associated with a full bathroom. And so I calculated that number and I put that in. So that number, because this house only has one bathroom, I added into the value of this house to get it to two baths. And there's a plus and minus. And I think that was Fatima who was saying that.
How do you calculate the value? Is there another class on that?
There's a chart for
So
that.
there's a chart for that. And what happens is you use the chart, and the chart goes, you know, it has like 400,000, 750,000, a million, and there's percentages associated with it. So the house there was, you know, 485,000. You have to do some multiplication, but it comes up with the numbers. If the house that you're comparing it to, so here's my subject A, which is the house, which is my daughter's house. Subject B doesn't have the extra bathroom. I have to add that bathroom in subject B to true it up to my daughter's house, because my daughter has two bathrooms. Do you understand that concept? Right? If the square footage of subject B is smaller than my daughter's house, subject A, I have to add in value to true it up to her square footage. Okay? If the house I'm comparing it to is larger, then it gets subtracted. And that's where bedrooms come into play. If they had an extra half bath or an extra bathroom, I would reduce their price to make it equal to my daughter's house. So that's kind of the thought process there.
They're kind of comparing apples to apples, making it even feel.
That's right. So you're equalizing it.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that's if you want to do it in a very scientific way. So I'm going to show you a couple things as we round up the corner, and I'm certainly, if people are interested in further conversation on comparatives, just, you know, let me give you let me just put in the chat the email to send, you know, if you want to just say, okay, I'd like to hear more about CMA.
After, you remember what's that acronym to remember, like CIS or CBA, something CBS, something like that? Compass.
So a CMA is a comparative market analysis or competitive market analysis. You're going to hear people say one or the other.
No, I'm talking about when you make deductions to differentiate if it's negative or positive. This is an acronym I was taught in real estate school, which I don't remember.
I don't remember either.
I think it's CIA or CBS. Something.
I don't know. We'll have to look that up, Fatima.
Okay.
But you guys are right. You guys got the concept in terms of equalizing and bringing them to apples, because otherwise you got apples and oranges, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Is this too much to think about? Am I making your head hurt? I don't mean to.
No, it's good. I mean, you're giving us good feedback.
Trying to absorb it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we just have to go and put it into practice and start like playing around with it right away, so that it could, you know, we could just grasp it.
Exactly.
So
The whole CMA process is just like, it's so scary. It's hard. It's scary. I mean, I have buyers and they have houses to sell. And they're like, what should I sell for? I'm like, don't ask me that.
So, well, so here's the thing, keep that in your head. Silent eyes, right? Silent mouth. You don't, well, you want to be able to like, that's a good question. Let's think about that. You know, I'll do a CMA. Okay. So, and here's the thing is that I really recommend the way I started was that you can do it on your own house as a CMA. You can pick a house in your town and do a CMA. But I think several of you said it on tonight. You've got to actually put this into practice and you got to start thinking about it. Got to really start thinking about it. So I'm going to show you, there's two other things I want to show you and then we'll wrap up. Is that okay with everyone if we take a few more minutes together? I promise I won't keep you too long.
Yeah.
I know everyone's hungry, right? Or need to get on to the next thing in your life. Spend time with your families or decompress and watch a little TV, whatever it is that you want to do this evening. All right, let me get back here. We're going to go into NJMLS. So I will tell you that what happens is over time too, especially if I'm working with buyers, typically with a buyer, I don't typically do a very detailed CMA because it's usually not necessary. What I'm able to do is I'm going to go back to that save search. So I'm going to recommend that you guys, for the towns that you're doing business in, start doing save searches so that you can go in and you can look at your market activity. And I'm going to just pull up Leonia because I have a save search for Leonia. And I'm going to just pull this up on the screen. And on this particular case, I didn't add in, like normally I would add in the number of bedrooms or number of the baths when it's a CMA, but I want you to get more just the gist of this because you guys can play with this. But one of my favorite.
We don't see your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't share it. That was a test.
You passed, Fatima. You're paying attention.
I love it. There you go. All right, now you can see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so I ran my search. So you guys can go in, you can do your property searches. Remember, active this is something that's important because when you think about it, the difference is if I'm doing a CMA, I'm really focused on sold. But if I want to understand what's happening in the market and share with my seller or buyer what's happening with the market, I need to show active, under contract, and sold. So that's what this right now, this is everything. It's not just, you know, in their price point, this is everything that's on the market and whatever type of house. I'm going to check all the boxes. This is one of my favorite reports besides that map report. And it is called, if I can find it, the Customer Summary Report. And here, I'll tell you why I like it when it comes up on the screen. So isn't this fun? I think it's fun. It gives me an average list price and it gives me an average days on market.
I've never seen this.
Okay, so isn't that a cool report?
Yes, it is. Awesome.
And think about if you're doing a CMA. So I do it, the way I do it for my sellers as an example is I run everything just so they get an idea of what's happening in the town, right? So there's 4 things that are active right now. Let's say my seller is in the $500,000 to $600,000 range. I'm going to point out to them, hey, you just had one house. So you have very little competition right now. Right. And this happens to be like that typically is an average, but you can see how the average days of market also is, you know, being skewed by these two houses that are sitting on the market. Right. This one that is overpriced and this one that has a lot of work that needs to get done to it. And I know that because I know my inventory in town. Now I get a little recap of my under contract. And I can start to see, and this is where I can use this to talk to them to say, look at this house. This house was priced really well because look at this. It went into under contract in only 9 days. So what is that telling me? That house must have the features and benefits are desirable at the price point. Okay, I'm starting to get some insight of what's going on, right? And now I get to see my houses that are sold. And again, this house sold in 9 days. This whole house sold in 17 days. This house sold in 10 days. Now I'm seeing, wow, things are moving fast. And I'm learning. And now I get to, I like to include the expired because that goes back to that seller that really wanted a high price. And these are the people that didn't guess right what their price should be in the beginning. But I love this report. And you can tailor it so that you can go into specific price points, or you can put like specific styles of houses, or you can put specific, you know, features and benefits, how many bedrooms, how many baths, however you choose, but it narrows and it helps to focus the conversation. And the last thing that I want to show you, if Gopi is still with us, is we're going to go into statistics for a minute.
Sorry.
So statistics are over here. So you have these menus up at the top. Statistics are over here. And I like to go in, there's a couple of different reports I go into. I always go into statistics first. And I put in my time frame. I always like to be, I start with the most current. So I'm picking 3 months. I'm going to look at single family homes, but you have choices here of what you want. I know that Bergen County is 2. I'm going to actually put in Leonia. I happen to know that it's 229, but you have the binoculars here if you don't know the name of the number for your town that you're looking at. And I'm going to click execute. And now I have a report on the screen that's showing me what's happening within the last 3 months, that we've had 24 sold, and some that were listed and sold by the same person. There's 14 new out there. And that could be new to active versus what's back on market or extended. And it's giving me the total volume. It's giving me average price, the average sold, the median price. Does anybody know the difference between medium and average?
The medium is the one in the middle, and then the average is the sum of all divided by the number amount.
Correct, correct. So the median is basically 50% of the homes are higher than that price point, 50% are below that price point. That's all that it is. And then here's where you get to start seeing what happened in terms of the sold, the sale to list price. So coming in at 97%. Last list price means they had to take a price change. And that came in at 98%. And then you can see the average days on market. So this is very helpful. And you can see here that there's less than a month of inventory right now in my town. Okay, so that's one report I really like. The other report that I really like, and hopefully it won't bend, these come out and, you know, as you look at it, this is a good time now for you to go in and look at annual and see what happened. And this actually shows you by town. Hopefully it'll come up. And so you see here, it's giving me number of sold for the last 3 years, average sold, medium, by town. This happens to be Bergen County. Right now, this is everything, but as you scroll through the pages, you can see only single family homes, condos and townhomes. It then gives you the price change, you know, what was the difference this year versus last year, the change in average sold price, the change in median sale price. You've got a lot of information at your fingertips. And again, I will encourage you to go out and look at statistics and look at reports so that you start to get comfortable with your towns that you're planning to do business in.
So Kathy, we can use this for buyers and sellers. I get when we're doing it for sellers, but when we're using this information to help buyers submit an offer,
yes,
which reports do you definitely recommend that we do in an effort to save time? Because we have to quick in submitting the offers.
Well, what I do is I use that customer summary report. And then what I do is I actually go in, but what I do is I go into the customer summary report, but I actually go into each MLS to see that I want to see, again, I use the map report, but I mean, Once I'm in the search, I go over to the map version because I want to see how far away is that house to the house that they're putting an offer in. So it's like, if I can say to them around the corner, this house, another house sold for 500,000, you know, and they want to put an offer in for 475, I'm going to say, listen, I think that you have to think about that. But I also can say the other piece of that is, if they get that house for 475, because the other one sold for 500, all of a sudden they're building equity. Because there's going to be, those prices in that area are increasing.
Okay.
So I use that customer summary report. I look at individual houses because I want to see what's most like it that recently sold. And I like the map report because I like them to see that, oh yeah, that's just around the corner.
Okay.
And then I always give them a range, even for an offer. I give them a range. I give them thoughts. It's their decision what offer they want to put in.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Listen, I know we are so way over time. You guys have been great to spend time with me. Any parting thoughts, questions before we sign off for the evening?
Could you share with us what a completed CMA presentation looks like that you would send to a client?
I can show you. I can show you what I sent to my daughter. If you'd like. Now, I will also tell you that I typically don't send like this because it was for a price adjustment, like, for them to do PMI. I sent it to them. But normally I would actually be not sending it ahead of time.
Oh, I'm in a class.
Seller, I'm actually bringing it with me.
I'm gonna make her some, I gotta find it because she, wants noodles and
We love noodles.
All right.
Someone hungry.
Yes.
Absolutely, and I'm keeping everybody, I'm keeping everyone from it. So I can show you what that CMA looks like. It's one of the examples. Again, there's different, you can do CMAs. I did it in NJMLS tonight. You can also do them in RPR. Chris Sapienza showed us the other day how to do them in RPR. You can do them in Remine. It's all what the output you want it to look. How pretty do you want your CMA to look? You can decide how fancy that needs to look, but I can show you an example really quickly and then we should sign off because I want to be respectful of everyone, okay?
Okay.
And again, this is the version in NJMLS. I will tell you the NJMLS version isn't the prettiest, but it is, it's functional.
That was a cloud CMA you did?
You can also run a cloud CMA. I did not, I didn't use the cloud version. I used just the basic facts.
Okay.
Okay, so this is what I sent. So you know me, I like my maps, right? So I sent them the map. It actually shows their house over here, that they can see the houses I chose. This is just a summary of the comparables. This is one of the pages I chose. And all of these reports give you options, what you want to include, not include. This is showing the comparatives of the houses that I chose, and it shows so they can actually see side by side what things sold at. And then also based on the work I did, what the number is to true it up, which is at the bottom. Whoops, sorry. Find of its own. Then this actually starts to show the interior pictures. I typically, for interior pictures, I don't usually share a lot. I usually come prepared and I prefer to actually show them online what a house will look like, the inside of a house looks like, because it's hard to see this. But again, for the purpose I was using this for, these small pictures were fine. They'll be able to go online themselves and look. Normally I would be showing out of like the 6 or 8 homes I'm using, I choose 1 or 2 that I would actually pull up to show them online because I want to show the larger picture. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then I can do a little Vanna White, right? And I stay in control. And so this is the house that actually sold for 491, but when I comped it to their house, the new number came out to 532. So these are just the pages, and then let's see if there's anything else there. Yeah, I think I didn't include anything else. There are other summary pages. It becomes a very personal decision about what you want to include or not include. Again, there's the difference between, you don't want to give too much, remember that conversation about too many keys to the car away, right? Is you want to lead the conversation, you want to share information, but you also want to have there, this is the time where sometimes you're holding the information in your hand and you're verbally having a conversation with them. The other things that I always like to know what Zillow says, know what Redfin says about their house. I actually had one seller where I was able to say, you know what? Zillow actually is underpricing your house. So I was able to deliver a great message. We think you can get more for your house. And they did. Then I had another seller who was like $100,000 over what, like Zillow said, Zillow had a low number. My seller thought that they could get a lot more for their house. And we had to have that conversation. Be respectful, not discount their feelings, but show them what the market was showing them. And help them get to a place that they were comfortable with. All right?
Yep.
Okay,
Good stuff.
that's my story.
Thank you so much.
Is this gonna be recorded?